Hey guys, welcome to my ponytail. Huh. Welcome to She Knows Arsenal. We're going over the most recent Arsenal news and transfer news. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel and get in the chat and let me know how you guys are feeling on this wonderful Wednesday. I've like the days just run into each other. Like sometimes I just don't remember what day it is, but it is Wednesday. And I'm going to call this Arsenal Bomba Day because all the Bombas today, we are getting so much good news from an Arsenal perspective, from, deals being agreed to new contracts being signed in the academy as well as the men's first team, agreements, official announcements for the women's team as well. And now it looks like Arsenal might start focusing in on outgoings. So we can talk about that as well. But it is a really good day to be an Arsenal fan. And yeah, I'm feeling nice and relaxed and chill because deals have gotten agreed. And yesterday, before the Ornstein, exclusive, earlier on in the day, I was just like, I just can't wait to see the back of this Rice deal, like, because I think we kind of felt like, or a lot of us felt like once City dropped out of the race, I did feel like we were pretty much at the end game there because that was pretty much the only thing that I thought would really hurt us from there. I thought if we had gotten this far into the deal and we wanted the player this much, we would have the financial capabilities to make it happen. But West Ham, and I've reiterated this so many times because I actually don't think people are grasping the fact that West Ham wanting £100 million in 18 months is unprecedented and quite unreasonable and is really a symptom of them mismanaging their money and their cash flow, and they're on the FFP watch list, and so they need cash in order to reinvest into the squad and make sure that they can play in Europe and they're not, disqualified from it because they're not following the regulations. And so earlier on in the saga when people were, saying Arsenal were penny pinching and how dare they want to pay, the fee in 4 or 5 payments. Well, that's normal. Like everybody pays in installments. And from a financial perspective, like that's what you want to do. You don't want to pay everything up front, not a big fee like 100 million. And so it was really, I think, disappointing to me that people were making it seem like Arsenal were doing wrong when it's actually because West Ham don't have the cash flow necessary to fall within the FFP regulations that they needed a lot of that money up front. So Arsenal and West Ham needed to come to some sort of agreement, and that agreement was actually supposed to come to fruition on Friday. And there were some leaks and stuff that were coming out that it was going to happen on Friday. It didn't quite go through that way. Then they said early, like maybe Monday. Monday went past, and then we got to Tuesday. And I was like, today has got to be the day because this financial structure, this, whatever, the final little odds and ends, we're getting up until, the week before we're going to start preseason. And selfishly, like as an Arsenal fan, like I want to see all of our new signings like Havertz, Timber, and Rice there for the beginning of preseason, because I think that was a big reason why Arsenal did so well at the beginning of the season, was because they had those signings lined up. We got things done quickly, and then they had all that time to adapt into the squad, albeit it didn't take Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus long to adapt, or William Saliba, but it makes a difference, I think, So I was desperate for some sort of news to come through, and lo and behold, Jacob Steinberg, who has been excellent throughout the entire Rice saga, was saying that, there had been a breakthrough in terms of the payment structure for the guaranteed fee of 100 million for Declan Rice. And which was good because that is the money that I think was the most difficult to figure out how Arsenal could continue to spend, and West Ham could get a lot of that money up front, and both clubs could be happy with the outcome. And the outcome ended up being 3 payments by 2025. So instead of 2 payments by 2024. We ended up in a compromise for 2025 in 3 payments, which, you know, that is a lot of money to pay in a very short amount of time. But Arsenal really want Declan Rice. I think the way that Arsenal went about it, the money that they're putting forward for it, the patience, that I think that they've had for West Ham just show that Arsenal really, really believe that this player is going to make a huge difference for the club. So I was happy to see that. And then last night around or early this morning around what was it? Was it like midnight? Um, Ornstein came out with his exclusive around the deal being finally agreed and medical taking place. And the medical for Declan Rice is going to take place on Friday. I'm sure they're doing media preparations and things like that. But I don't really care about announcements that much. They're fun. I like the interviews. I like the content, but I just want the deal to kind of be done and see the guys in the shirt running around on the pitch, getting ready for the season. So Declan Rice for me, like get that one done, all the tension released from the body because that's the big one. That's the big one that you have to get over the line, get done. And it's a signature signing. It's a big deal. And he's now our, record signing for like a split second. The record signing was Kai Havertz, but now it's Declan Rice. And I think it's nice to kind of turn the page on like Pepe being our record signing, especially because he didn't really work out. And now it's Declan Rice. We broke the English record as well. So it's a big deal. And I'm glad it's kind of coming to a close now. But getting that final agreement was kind of the ending point. Now Arsenal can just go ahead and finish up the formalities, and he is basically an Arsenal player, which is amazing. Let's see what you guys are saying. Tawanda says, I'm so excited. I am excited as well. B-Doc says Arsenal will have to balance the books next year if they don't win anything of note, spending 1.1 euros on the last decade with no Premier League or Champions League. We don't know what Arsenal's financial situation is. I do see that there's a lot of pressure coming from different places around what Arsenal need to do. They have to win the Premier League. They have to win the Champions League. They have to do all of that. We can talk later on about what the expectations of this team is once we kind of see what everybody else has done and what Arsenal's final transfer window looks like. But I feel like a lot of this is just like kind of premature. Instead of just saying Arsenal are having a great window, people are turning that into like this weird kind of like pressure. We have to do this. We have to do that. Yes, Arsenal have to win trophies and there's going to be an increased amount of pressure next season. But I just feel like it's a little bit premature that, the players haven't even gotten into the shirt yet. And people are trying to say we need to win the Champions League. Without actually taking the step of saying that with these signings, Arsenal are one of the best teams in the world. That's what you're basically saying. One of the best teams in the world have the pressure of having to win their league titles in the Champions League. So unless people want to give that as well, then I'm not really like listening at the moment. Tawanda says Arsenal doing serious business this time around. Something hasn't happened in a long time. It hasn't. I actually don't think Arsenal have moved like this since, David Dean. Like it's been a long time since Arsenal moved like this. So it's really nice to see the club do the business, do it early, take some risks, really push the envelope, not play it safe. I like that. Graham says, who is this club and what have they done with the old Arsenal? I hope the old Arsenal doesn't come back because I like this Arsenal. But yeah, it's what Edu and Vinay and Arteta kind of have always spoken about, but it wasn't easy to see it because we had started off in such a low place. I think early on, maybe they made some mistakes. There's also the difficulty around the pandemic and how that, made things more difficult from a financial perspective for Arsenal and most teams. And we had some really difficult moments where it was hard to see what, that this vision that they were talking about, it was really difficult to see. And I think now we're starting to see the fruits of their labor, and so obviously the end of the rainbow, is definitely winning trophies and titles, things like that. But you can definitely see that they're building a team, that's going to be capable of winning the biggest honors. So that's the most important thing. You have to have the type of squad that's going to do that. And I think that's what they're trying to do. Ivy says, finally, that deal is done. No more West Ham deals again, please. Yeah, it wasn't fun really dealing with them. I do think that, all the media kind of like feeding the media, briefing them and putting things out there to hurry Arsenal along. Obviously those things happen in a lot of negotiations, but it just felt like for a deal of this magnitude, there didn't really need to be that level of like games being played. But I think from a West Ham perspective, it was probably disappointing to not be able to get the bidding war that they had anticipated. And the way that Arsenal made sure that that didn't happen was by making sure that they had the player. Having the player, having the players buy in made it a lot more difficult to get other teams involved, because he really kind of just wanted to go to Arsenal. If we had not been able to agree the fee, I'm pretty sure that Declan Rice would not have just stayed at West Ham. He would have ended up going somewhere else. But he was so adamant about going to Arsenal and that being his preferred destination. I do think it put a wet blanket on their bidding war. And so that's what made that, I think, the negotiations beyond agreeing the fee a lot more tenuous. But I think it's also being drip fed all the information. I think if a week had just went by and we didn't really hear anything from the moment the fee was agreed till now, it wouldn't have seemed as long and arduous, but it seemed that way because of all the little like little, you know, bits of media coming out to kind of fuel that little bit of doubt, I think. And then all the Arsenal in the nose fucking guessing, like that was annoying as well. Like it's not just from like a West Ham perspective. I think our fan base can be quite annoying and people want to act like they're in the know. And so they just keep saying, it's tomorrow. It's getting announced tomorrow. They've closed down the stadium. Just shut up. Like, you don't know anything. You know, you don't know anything. Top says, this is a very good squad, not just starting 11. I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal buy one more attacker. I think Arsenal are definitely going to buy more players. It's just a matter of actually moving people out now. So yeah. Let's see. Dr. Omizia says we are ready to cook white rice in the preparation for the Partey. And yeah, we've got enough timber to get the food cooked. Big up to you, Jess. Next up, get me Frankie de Jong, Chouameni if Partey goes. Those rumors are kind of underlying kind of things. We haven't seen anybody like reliable or anything saying, anything about Chouameni or Frankie de Jong, but I do think we have another big transfer, waiting in the wings for sure. Let's see. Social Join says, salty non-Arsenal fans think they can talk about Arsenal's finances and projected goals like they know the in-house plans. My thing is, I don't have an issue with rivals saying that we have to win big trophies. What I have an issue with is, I am more than okay with accepting that level of pressure if you're willing to say that you believe Arsenal are one of the best teams in the world. You can't have high expectations of a team, a club, a manager that you don't rate. And so if you're willing to say that we're actually a really good team, one of the best in the world, and we have the capability to win those things, then I'm willing to accept that pressure. But unless we get that part of it, I'm not really hearing you, because you can't say you don't rate us and we're not that good and everybody's overrated and stuff and then say, but you need to win the Champions League. Like, be fucking for real. Let's see. Yassine says, hello, Jess. You're doing well. Congrats on the signing of Rice, Kai, and Timber. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good start to the window. I can't lie. Some other teams are obviously going to start getting their business over the line. And, you've seen Liverpool, with Soboslai. That's a really good signing for them. McAllister is obviously a really good signing for them as well. Manchester United signing Mason Mount. I, for one, actually really rate Mount, and I think he'll be fine at Manchester United. So that's interesting. And then we know Chelsea is going to get involved in the party at some point. So it's going to be interesting to see how everybody gets along. But this might be one of the most kind of like exciting transfer windows in terms of the big teams all kind of spending big at the same time. I don't think we're going to be the only team that reaches 200 million spent. I think it's going to, like us, Man City, probably Chelsea as well. So there's going to be a lot of big money spent across the big teams. So it's going to be a lot of pressure on everybody. Damon says, I'm finally seeing the quality and depth of our squad. Not perfect, but much better than last season, and rotation can finally take place. We've spoken about this many, many times, that like squad management and rotation at the right times is going to be where we're going to really see Arteta's growth. That has been, I think, a weak point for him. I think you can give him maybe a little bit of grace by saying like maybe he didn't have the players that he trusted. But at this point, he will have spent enough money and have chosen enough of these players, renewed enough of these players where if he doesn't trust them, there's a huge problem. So, yeah, players like Emil Smith Rowe and Vieira should be getting more minutes. We should be seeing Odegaard and Saka rotated out a little bit more. We should see, players like, Saliba and Gabriel rotated a little bit more too. So it's definitely going to be a big season for Mikel Arteta in terms of his squad management, but he will have the tools to do it, which is nice to see. Tony Fulbrook says Arsenal normally do their deals in private. Rice was different. They're not going to let any Tom, Dick, and Harry know until it's done. Rice was different because of West Ham. I think Arsenal, if they had, gotten their way, that deal would have been quite, quiet. But West Ham needed to make it loud, because that's what they wanted. So yeah, I'm pretty sure, Arsenal would have preferred to keep everything under wraps. Usually we don't hear much about deals until, you know, it's damn near done. Like Timber, damn near done. We heard about it. Havertz was done like that. Rice was different. I think mostly because West Ham wanted it to be out there in the public, and also wanted to make Arsenal look like some penny pinching, you know, um, cheapskates because we didn't want to pay in two payments. Like, let's be real. 33 Fiver says, great depth if we keep Partey or bring an adequate option. That's important. If, Thomas Partey does leave, there has to be a midfielder that comes in of a certain level of quality. I think that's something that we have to look forward to. Um, Lucas says, from what I see, Arsenal is ready. Last season, they were unlucky. These times, they're going to go all out for it. Understand, as a rival fan, I can say good luck. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, if you want to say that Arsenal need to be doing all these things, then you also need to be like man enough or woman enough to say that Arsenal are very, very good. And so some rivals have kind of like the maturity to do it and others don't, and that's fine. But Arsenal do have massive pressure, but we are building the squad that makes me feel confident that we're going to get it done. I've always said that I feel like this season for sure we're going to win silverware. I don't know exactly what trophy we're going to win, but we're going to win something. And I think we're going to surprise more people this season that had doubts from last season as well. There's 400 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. I want to talk about jurrien Timber because that deal was also given the done deal. And here we go from, your Fabricios and Ornstein. We knew that one had been kind of done in the background for a while. I do think Arsenal wanted to tie up Rice first and then go ahead and get Timber done because there wasn't anything to really worry about there. They just needed to like kind of do the paperwork on that one. And he's on his way to do his medical. Both him and Rice will probably get announced like all by the end of this week. Like they'll both be announced because I think Arsenal were desperate to make sure these two players in with Kai Havertz all went on the preseason tour like right away in Germany. So Timber, what a deal this is. He was definitely going for a lot more last season. From Ajax. Ajax were kind of quoting Manchester United, in the 50s and 60s, millions, euros, kind of like in that kind of realm. And Arsenal, I'm just finding the numbers now because I just want to make sure I get this right. But if I'm not mistaken, it's like a base fee of like 34 million pounds. Yeah, I'm just getting it really quick. I'm pretty sure yeah. The final timber fee is set to be 34 million pounds and 4 in add-ons. That is a steal for a player of his quality. Out of all of the players that we have Kai Havertz, we have Rice, Timber for me is the most exciting because I can't quite pin down how I feel like this is going to work, but a player of his quality, his technical ability is something that I think Arsenal are going to really find useful. And the fee is just great. And it's nice to see Arsenal be able to negotiate and not have to pay top dollar for every single player that they go after. Sometimes you just have to pay. And that's kind of what happened with Rice, albeit the initial fee or the initial fee that was being touted by West Ham at the beginning of that saga was 120 million. We ended up at 100 million for the guaranteed fee, but that's just a big fee. You just had to pay it. With Uri and Timber, like they initially wanted something around like 50 million. And that we kind of whittled it down right down to like a really nice, neat 34 million pounds. And so I like that. I like to see that, if we need to spend big and kind of overdo it a little bit for players that we really want, we'll do that. But we'll also negotiate when there's room to do so. And so Timber, super exciting player. Not quite sure how he's going to fit in because some people feel like because Rob Holding is leaving. I don't know if you guys saw that. That's another piece of information that's come out in the last couple of days that Rob Holding is either going to leave permanently or on a loan this summer. And so that news had made people feel like Timber is 100% coming in as a center back. But then there's other reports that have said that he's coming in as a right back. I think he's going to play both. And we're getting really in the weeds about where these players are going to play. But it is going to be interesting to see how Arsenal fit him in and if he initially comes in and starts or, if he's kind of slowly brought in. But, this is the type of squad depth that you need to have. We saw that like the end of the season, Rob Holding being in the team, it wasn't all his fault. That's not what I'm saying. But him being in the team hurt us, at the end of the season. And so if something were to happen to Saliba, if something were to happen to Ben White, a player of Timber's quality coming in versus somebody like Holding is so beneficial to this team. Don't forget, you have somebody like Tamiyasu who hopefully can stay fit. And that group of defenders, I think is something that we haven't seen from Arsenal in a long time is having a lot of different, high quality defenders and options back there so that our team doesn't just fall apart when one guy gets injured. Um, let's see. 33 Fiver says the cost help when the player only wants us. Yeah, and that's I think that has been a key focus for Arsenal in these last couple of windows is when they say that they don't want to get in a bidding war, no big teams really like to get in bidding wars. Man City has said it before. We don't like to get in bidding wars. It's not anything like, oh, if you're a big team, you should be willing to go punch for punch. Like, no, what you want is to get complete buy-in from the player so that the bidding war never happens and you could get a good fee. Nobody wants to be in a situation where they're going up, 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 up. That's just not what you want to do. And so Arsenal have done a really good job of getting full buy-in from players so that they can relax the negotiations, knowing that even if other teams come in, it won't mean anything because, they have the player. And so, yeah, that really helped with Timber because he was also being looked at by Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich has taken a lot of L's in this window, which is wild for a team like Bayern. I think it just shows like the strength and the strength of the Premier League from a playing standpoint and a financial standpoint. That like if a club like Bayern is having so many players decide to go to the Premier League, stay in the Premier League, whatever, how the pool really is like this just that big. But yeah, like Timber definitely only wanted Arsenal, and that definitely helped us with the fee. But 34 million, I mean, that is a steal. Bro Pro says Timber looks more like a midfield hybrid than a right back one. I agree with you. I just wonder, because sometimes we think the player is going to do something and then they end up doing something different. Like, I am open to the idea that maybe Havertz doesn't play midfield, but like I could be wrong on that. I feel like he is gonna play midfield, but if for some reason he ended up not playing it, I wouldn't be surprised because we don't ever really know what Arteta's truly thinking. Like, sometimes he tells us the truth, sometimes he lies. He said he's gonna play midfield. I'm taking it at face value, especially because other journalists have reiterated that as well. But Havertz could pop up and play false nine for us. You never know. Timber could pop up and play center back for us, even though we're all thinking he's going to play right back. We don't know. We can make, educated guesses. I've made educated guesses on this. But yeah, he looks like the midfielder hybrid type, like you said. We'll just have to wait and see. I love it. I love it. Let's see. Dev M says, Jess, in my opinion, Tomiyasu will be sold next summer if he can't stay fit this season. Yeah, I'm sure that he's gonna. I think there's a couple of players that, depending on how this season pans out for them, they may be, you know, looked at as sellable assets next summer. Not necessarily something that I'm thinking about very deeply at the moment because some of those players will be decent depth for us right now. But yeah, I think Tomiyasu has to be able to stay fit. I think in the 4 months that he was able to show peak fitness, he was quite good. And then ever since then, he's been a little hit and miss. Um, so it's going to be super important this season for him to stay fit. But if he can, he's such a useful player because he's really good one on one. He's really good in the air. He can play on both sides. When he's fit, technically, he's really good as well. And so, yeah, Tamiyasu, I definitely want him to have a good season. Cousin Earl says, we're moving forward as a club and people are asking about Pepe. I can't believe it. Talking about Pepe in 2023 is wild to me. But for the people that are asking what I would do with Pepe, I would cancel his contract and move on. I know that maybe he could be a decent option, but he went back to France and still struggled. So yeah, no. It's time to move on, you know? I think so. Okay, let's see. Tony says all of our players can play multiple positions and zones. Our buys are reinforcing this. I agree. OG says never seen a club win practically everything, yet their fans are still so unhappy. Why? Who are we talking about? Mr. says we'll do a city and play an inverted fullback and turn into a 3-2-4-1 when we have the ball. Vosinchenko and Timber can do the inverted fullback role. That's what I think as well. But again, if we popped up and Timber was playing center back, I wouldn't be surprised either because Arteta also like lies, like, and sometimes he says things and then he doesn't mean them. And also sometimes the journalists say things and they don't really have a good grasp on what Arsenal are trying to do. But I have the same feeling, Mr. that that's what we'll end up doing. The interesting little wrinkle in all of this is that there's new reports coming out around Arsenal's interest in another right back. We were interested, we were linked to somebody Hendricks. I didn't pay too much attention to that. He's a right back at RB Leipzig. Also, Jeremie Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen, and still linked to Cancelo. And so, if Arsenal want to bring in another right back, that makes me think that maybe they're looking at a right back with different qualities to a Timber, who we think is gonna play right back, and that would move Ben White into center back potentially. Not that I'm saying that Ben White is gonna get dropped or anything, but what I do think that we have to open our minds up to for next season is that not to get too attached to the starters. I think we have maybe 3 players that I think no matter what start. Maybe, yeah, Saka. I just don't see him being really challenged for his position, you guys. I think he's pretty much the face at Arsenal and is gonna play almost every single game. Odegaard and Ramsdale. I think everybody else is gonna have a little bit of rotation to their game next season, and we shouldn't be too attached to them being starters. So if Ben White ends up not starting next season and we just throw Timber straight in, I wouldn't be surprised if there was 3 or 4 games where Ben White comes back in, and maybe plays instead of Saliba or plays instead of Timber. I think we're going to be in an unprecedented kind of new uncharted territory where players that have always kind of started will be rotated in and out, and it'll just be okay because we're fighting on all 4 fronts. Everybody is going to have almost like an equal opportunity to show what they have, and it's not going to be like, well, if I'm not starting, I'm trying to get out of here. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's one of those where I'm excited for that new era of Arsenal where we don't have set starters all the time, but I still think there will be maybe 3. Yeah. Let's see. Macau says we'll be playing 3 center backs next season. I think we play 3 center backs now. It was Ben White and Gabriel and Saliba, and Zinchenko was pinched in at midfield, kind of playing as a pivot next to Thomas Partey. Like you guys said, the 3-2-4-1, that's what we were playing last season. I think we'll play it again. I always just kind of see us as like a back three team anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and just block you and just ban this guy. I just think sometimes people are just doing the most. Um, I don't know why people get on streams and like waste their time being like super negative and saying awful things. Like it's just weird. Tony Fulbrook says, if we can't sell Pepe, then give him a chance. If it doesn't work, pay him off. You can't. He has 1 year left on his deal. That's the problem, is that he has 1 year left on his deal. So this is kind of like the last time you can sell him. If you let him stay like this season, then he leaves on a free. So either you can cancel his contract now, you know, and just move him on and just be done with it, so you don't have to pay his wages for another year. I don't know. Like you could do a couple of different things, but I think keeping him makes no sense. Like he doesn't work for us right now. I don't know. He didn't work for us before. He wasn't great in France. There doesn't seem to be anybody interested in him, which I think is a huge red flag. Um, I just feel like it's just the time to move him on. Um, him and Cedric, Ainsley Maitland-Niles. I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles, his contract is already canceled, but I just think you just move those guys on. Like there's no reason to keep them around. Let's see. Not even the Saudis are in for Pepe. I think that says quite a bit. Social Join says we play 2 at the back and 3 at the back. Depends on how much we dominate. Exactly. The 2 at the back was scary. I'm not gonna lie. Like pushing 6 guys forward, having literally just the 2 back there was very scary to me. But it is how we play. Sometimes the one thing about Arteta is that we thought early on in his tenure that he was quite pragmatic. He's ended up being more of a madman than I think we ever accounted for or ever imagined he would be. He loves taking risks, and I think he takes risks from a transfer perspective. I think he takes risks the way that we play. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but yeah, the guy is nowhere near as pragmatic as I think we thought he would be, you know? Um, the Ed Reese says next season will not be about who plays, but when do they play? I like that. John Bishop says, hi, Jess. Hello to you as well, John. Fabricio says, FDJ would make this project go boom. I've seen those rumors. I would say that I would actually prefer somebody more like a Lavia or a Caicedo if Partey goes. Because then Rice ends up being kind of like your only physical, like athletic midfielder. If you have Odegaard, Havertz, and Frankie de Jong, as technical as that is, and as like great as that's going to be on the ball, I fear that you don't have that option of pushing Rice forward and putting like a different style of 6 in there for the games against Liverpool, the games against Newcastle, the games against City. And so, although I like the idea of Frankie de Jong, I feel like, maybe like a Lavia or Caicedo would be better. Okay. So yeah. Carl says I'd sell Pepe, Reece as the backup right back. That's another thing is about Reece. So let's get back into some of the news as well. We've kind of already spoken about Timber and Declan Rice and what's happened with their deals and how they're complete. But we've also had some contract signings as well. Saliba we kind of already knew about, which is amazing. A 4-year deal with an option for another year. And so Saliba, I think, was the big one. There was a period of time where I think a lot of us were unsure about whether or not he was going to be here for the long term or if he was even going to come back off of his loans. And there's this idea that, like, he didn't like Arteta and Arteta didn't like him. And, his agents were, upset about what had happened, from before. None of that is true. He's happy at Arsenal and he wants to stay for the long haul. And so that is so good for Arsenal to get Saliba locked down to a new contract long term, because having to replace somebody of his caliber would cost us more than what it would cost us to just give him a big ass contract. And so Saliba signing a new deal is great. And Reiss Nelson has also signed a 4-year +1. same type of deal till 2027, but with the additional year option. And what I was reading was that the reason why it took so long is that AC Milan were really pushing, and he was almost gone. And Arsenal gave him renegotiated the contract again in order to keep him. And so Reece Nelson is somebody that I do think deserves more playing time. Like if he were to stay, like when I originally set up, like if he does stay, he deserves more playing time because he earned it last season. I think him and a couple of other players could have been used a lot more, so that like somebody like Saka didn't get burnt out. There were games against like Crystal Palace and Leeds in particular, before we got into like the really pressurized part of the run in where Reece Nelson could have played those games and we probably still would have won them. They were at home. We ended up beating up those teams 4-1, 4-0, stuff like that. Why didn't we just play somebody like Reece? So I think he's somebody that if he were to stay, which he looks like he's staying now, needs the playing time. And so in order to offer him that playing time, I do think bringing in another right wing, even though that's probably what I would do just to be on the safe side, I think from an Arsenal perspective, if you give him quite a big deal, you promise him certain things, then you have to have the room to give him those minutes. And so it may end up being the case that Reece Nelson is a backup option for Saka and Martinelli. I actually think he's a better winger than Trossard, weirdly. Not that Trossard's not a good winger, but in our system, I think having kind of like direct forwards works a lot better than Trossard, who's more of like a creative link up type of guy. And so I actually like Trossard at center forward a lot more. But Reece Nelson is a really good option off of the left in particular. He can play off of the right, but it's a different dynamic because we know Saka, he's left footed. So you kind of need that same vibe. But Reece Nelson signing a new deal, I think, is great. You don't want your academy products to go for free. You don't want them, just walking out, and you get nothing for them. So at least getting him on a new deal gives you the option to sell him a little bit further down the line. And if he ends up being a really good squad option, you know, in the near future, that's great. But he needs playing time in order to, progress. And so that is kind of like the Arteta thing right now is you're getting Reece Nelson on this new deal. There has to be times where you sit Martinelli or sit Saka down and let him play and trust him to do so. Otherwise, you should have just let him go. But Reece Nelson was always somebody that I think Arteta really liked. And we saw that from the very beginning, arm around the shoulder, Reece Nelson. And so I'm not surprised that Arteta has really maybe pushed for this. It's just a matter of him getting the playing time and trusting him when it really matters. But I'm excited about it. I really am. Let's see. Nico says Nelson needs to stay fit. He does. He does need to stay fit. But if he does, he's a really good option. What I like about Reece is that he's just more similar to Saka and Martinelli in terms of his dynamism and his directness. And when he came off of the bench almost every single time, last season, he had some sort of impact. Where I thought he was a little bit lackluster was when he started games, but some of the games that he started were in the Europa League, and we kind of spoke about this the other day. I would take a lot of the performances that were in the Europa League with a grain of salt. I think overall the team was not focused on the Europa League. The lineups that we put out for it gave off the feeling that it was an important competition. And I think the people that played in it knew that they wouldn't play in the Premier League even if they had a good game. So there was definitely a lower ebb in the Europa League, and I don't think anybody performed well. So even though Reece Nelson did play in those games and sometimes he was good, sometimes he wasn't as good, I take more of what he did in the Premier League as an indication of the player that he is versus that. But yeah, Reece Nelson, I'm excited about it. I think that he deserves it. It's just a matter of him getting those minutes. Really good player though. What? Please don't tell me that. Wait. Okay, somebody I think is trying to scare me into thinking that Emil Smith Rowe was stretchered off in the England game. Don't play if that's not true. Please don't play around, you guys. It's not funny. Please don't play like that. Let's see. I'm just reading to make sure nothing has happened. You guys have scared me to death. If ESR has really been stretchered off, only say it if it's really happened. I don't want that, that fear. Um, let's see. Update 1, we can confirm that Sean Rice, Declan's dad, had no input into whether the player wanted to go. Both him and Declan admire and respect Man City and Pep, but Declan was just more sold at the offer at Arsenal. That's just more information about Declan Rice and Man City and Arsenal. I don't see anything about Emile Smith-Rowe. I'm sure if it actually happened that we would be seeing something about it. You guys don't play like that. That's not funny. That's not funny. So yeah, Reece Nelson. I'm excited. Let's see. The Ed Reese says Nelson last year versus Nelson the year before was really educational in what it means to have courage on the ball. The one thing that I will say about Reece Nelson versus Emile Smith-Rowe, just like to compare the two at the moment, is that when Reece Nelson was getting those minutes, I felt like he did have that confidence to like try to make things happen. Sometimes it came off, sometimes it didn't. But whether it was, against Bournemouth or whether it was against Man City, when he got those minutes, he made them count. The one thing about Emile Smith-Rowe that I've kind of felt since he's had the injuries and stuff like that is that the guy that used to get on the ball and make things happen is kind of shied away from it a little bit. And so that bravery needs to come back, because when Emile Smith-Rowe is really good is when he's on the ball, he's willing to take men on, show his skills, take shots and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think right now you're seeing like a Reece Nelson, like at the top of his game, like feeling himself. And Emile Smith-Rowe, it's a little bit lower, but hopefully Emile Smith-Rowe's courage and, like you said, bravery and confidence comes back up. But yeah, Nelson definitely had that about him where he would come out there and make things happen. And like Arsenal, like you have to be able to take the game by the scruff of the neck and not be afraid to make things happen. And I think Emile Smith-Rowe and Vieira suffered from that a little bit, where they got on the ball and they kind of did the easy thing, which was just to like pass it backwards or pass it sideways instead of trying to make something happen. This is Arsenal. You have to make things happen when you get on the ball. Let's see. Nico says Nelson is way better on the left than the right. We need to get a left-footed right winger. Yeah, Nelson is better on the left. This is true. He is better on the left. The system is suited for inverted wingers, so it would make sense that he would play better on the left anyway. The issue is that I would love for Arsenal to go out there and get a left-footed right winger. I would. I think that would be nice. My only thing is that I feel like because of the stature that Saka has in the team, and he's going to be somebody that probably just plays almost every single game. That's kind of how I feel. I think he's going to be somewhat of like a Mohamed Salah to us. I don't know if you guys noticed it. Salah doesn't have a backup. He doesn't have anybody that, there's players that can play his position, but most of the time it's just him playing. And so part of the reason why sometimes I do think Arteta just plays him is to build up that level of like playing every single game and playing every single minute, because that is the plan. Whether we like it or not. I just don't have a feeling that we're going to go out there and get that left-footed right winger. Not now. Not with all the players that we have that can kind of play in that position. I know they're not perfect fits, but like Havertz can play there, Vieira can play there, and we need another midfielder more than that. So I'm not feeling it, but if it happens, that'd be great. Something just makes me feel like Saka is going to just be that guy, playing every minute. Diallo says, agreed. Nelson, the Brazilian, as a left winger, no doubt. T01 says, ESR just missed 2 big chances. Gordon diving better than Saka. Yeah, I don't have the game on. Obviously, it's not on because I'm like focusing on this right now. But, just hopefully Emile Smith-Rowe doesn't miss any more sitters, like you guys are saying, if he actually is missing those sitters. Terrence Tibbs says, name 3 left-footed right wingers who could join Arsenal. There's not many. Like the winger market is awful, I think especially for left-footed right wingers or right wingers in general. So, and I don't think you want somebody like Gnabry. Like, as much as I loved him at Arsenal and a couple of years ago would have been like desperate to have him back, I think his best years are behind him. So, Diaby is probably the closest thing. You have Diaby and you have Mohamed Kudus, you know, good options. I think Kudus is more attractive than maybe Diaby. But I even think Mohamed Kudus in the future ends up being an 8 anyway. So it's one of those. It's really one of those where Saka, I just think, is going to play loads of minutes. Loads of minutes. Let's see. Miracle says, "Hey, Jess, big up." Oh, sorry. It's my birthday today, and getting this news. Awesome present. From Arsenal, Get Me Chouameni, and we're cooking. Happy birthday to you. This is a really good birthday present for you, which that's so cool. I would love for my birthday is in January, so like nothing really happens for me on my birthday from an Arsenal perspective. But that's great news, and so happy birthday. Hopefully you enjoy your day. And yeah, cheers. Hopefully more big news to come, which would be great. But yeah, I'm not sure that we'll bring in anybody, I'm not sure we'll bring in anybody. But so we kind of already went over the two big ones of Timber and Rice. We also kind of went over like Saliba and Nelson. And Ethan Noweri has also committed his future to Arsenal, at least like from like a scholarship perspective. Remember, his future for a long period of time was up in the air, and he's also like kind of signed on. So that's nice. Chelsea and Man City were offering him insane money in order to, go over to them, but all he had to do was really see what happened to Amari Hutchinson. I think make the right choice. Being at Arsenal is the right choice, I think, for him. And so he's very highly rated. I have to admit, like, he's not somebody that I've watched that much. I'm not an expert at the academy or anything, but from what I've read, he's very highly rated. And Mile Lewis Skelly as well. Like, they're both like supposed to be like the best in their age group, and so retaining them, keeping them is super important. And so yeah, it's nice to not see our best and brightest go somewhere else or to rivals. So getting the news about Ethan Noweri was also really, really good news too. So yeah. There's 422 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. Boy says Noweri is the best under 18 prospect I've ever seen at Arsenal. Those are big words. Very, very big words. But yeah, I think him signing on as well is really, really good. Let me just check, make sure there hasn't been any more news. We can also kind of Gibb White, did he miss a penalty? Gibbs White misses a penalty. I probably should pop this game on. I'm gonna put it on another screen just so I can see it as well, because I'm like I'm getting FOMO. I'm like, wait, I can't see. But yeah, we can also talk about Balogun. There's been a lot of talk around Balogun, and people being kind of like, there's been like weird conversations around Balogun and like, is he being treated poorly because he believes in himself, or whatever, things like that. So we can talk about Balogun and the price point that Arsenal have put on him. We can talk about other outgoings, because there's some other players that are probably going to leave. Thomas Partey, he has been constantly linked to a move away. Whether or not that happens, I think is very like based upon what kind of money people are talking about. The problem with Thomas Partey is that, if his preference is to stay in Europe, then it's highly unlikely that Arsenal get anything over 30 million, which is the fee that Arsenal are looking for, 30 million pounds. I think it's quite unlikely that anybody in Europe would offer that for him, with his contract length and the fact that Europe is poor, and his off the field issues too. So I think there's a chance that Thomas Partey ends up staying, to be honest. But it does look Arsenal are trying to move him on. So that's going to be something that we have to, keep an eye out for. But if Thomas Partey were to go, I would say, I would think that we need to bring in somebody that's kind of similar to him. So, speaking on the Frankie de Jong type, like in the know type rumors, I mean, Frankie de Jong is an excellent player, and I never would turn down an opportunity to stick it to United again and bring a player that they were highly like interested in and have them at Arsenal. But I just feel like that's a lot of lightweightness and not enough like robustness and physicality. And so somebody more in the mold of a Caicedo or a Lavia, I think would be a better choice. I know people are talking about Chouameni. I just cannot see that happening. With the fee that we probably have to put down. And he's only been there for like a year, so I don't really know if I see Chouameni as being like a realistic option. But if Thomas Partey were to leave, I think somebody of that mold would be a better fit than somebody like Frankie de Jong. Let's see. Edu Gaspar's Grill says he'll probably stay. I don't see anyone bar Saudis paying. Talking about Thomas Partey. Umar says Partey is better than Rice. What I would say is that even if Partey is better than Rice, let's just play this game a little bit. Let's say Partey is better than Rice. I would say that is probably marginal, if it's not a lot. If Partey is better than Rice, it's probably marginally better. At 24 years old, playing in a dead West Ham team, with your best years in front of you, if you're marginally worse than Thomas Partey, who on his day is one of the best in the league, probably only second to Rodri, then I think we're making the right decision. Because, then trajectory would say that Rice would surpass Thomas Partey quite quickly, playing in a better team, being coached by Mikel Arteta, and having his best years ahead of him. So, him being better than Rice for me is I don't even know if it's I believe it. I actually don't believe that. But even if I did, it still doesn't mean that it doesn't really mean much. Thomas Partey is 30 years old. Declan Rice is 24, playing in a dead West Ham team. So, what does that even mean? So yeah. Let's see. Marco says, Jess, Madrid is getting Guler. I don't know if it's Guler. You guys don't kill me. Their midfield is now overcrowded. The Chouameni noise is not that crazy. Let's see how the rest of the summer unfolds, especially if Madrid plays 200 million for Mbappe. Yeah, there might be, a need for somebody to move on. It's just something that I'm not going to get my hopes up for, because he's such a great player that, like, if I start really believing it in any way, like, I don't want to get my heart broken. But maybe if there is room, there's an opportunity for Arsenal to, snap him up. But I'll wait until Thomas Partey is actually gone, because you would have to get rid of Thomas Partey, maybe even another player, to kind of like get the fee together, I think, for that. Terrence Tibbs says Gula. So yeah, it's Gula. I was lambasted not too long ago for not knowing how to say Soboslai, because I was saying Soboslai. So I want to make sure I kind of get more of them right now, because I don't want people getting upset that I'm saying the wrong thing. So if it's Gula, then yeah, Gula. Helen says, but at least Arsenal is not supposed to sell Thomas. The thing about the whole Thomas Partey situation is it's hard to have the conversation around why Arsenal will be moving him on, because some people just refuse to actually look at the holistic, situation of Thomas Partey. They're only looking at what goes on the pitch when he's playing well. So basically it's like, well, the only thing that matters is how he played from August until April of this season. That's it. That's all that matters. But we know that there's so much more than that. It's how he's performed in past seasons. It's his contract length. It's the off the field issues. It's a bunch of different things that would make Arsenal maybe consider moving him on. So if the conversation is always just, well, he's one of the best, when he's playing well, that's not really the conversation that we're having. There's much more to it than just that. Dev M says selling Partey and Balogun will get us enough funds for another big transfer. Balogun being, quoted as like 40 to 50 million fee is perfect, because ideally, I'm sure Arsenal wanna make sure that they get over 30 million, because originally the fee that they were saying that they were looking for was about 30 million or more. But if you start at 30 million, 35 million, inevitably you'll end up somewhere around 25, maybe 30. So in order for Arsenal to get more than 30 million, maybe closer to 35, 40, is to start a little bit higher. And plus he warrants that with all the hype around him, and the goals that he scored. And if it was anybody else, they would be getting that type of fee. So maybe somebody will, come up with that type of money. Crystal Palace are interested in him. Not Balogun, sorry, Brighton are also interested in him, and other teams across Europe. So there should be enough interest there for Arsenal to get 40 million at the very least for Florian Balogun. And so if you're right, if you were to sell Thomas Partey for, let's say, the 30 million and Balogun for 40, and you already have the 20 million for xhaka, that is enough to bring in somebody of very high quality. We just have to see how it all pans out, because we always do all these long lists of players that we're going to sell, 8, 9 players deep, and we only end up selling like 4, so um, it's harder than it looks. 33 Fiver says Partey's last steam because there was no rotation. He lost steam. Now that Rice is here, why would we replace him? We need a proper replacement, else we are where we were last year. Again, if we're going to ignore the very big elephant in the room, then it's a very difficult conversation to have. All things considered, there's a very big reason why you'd consider moving him on, no matter how good he is as a player. Sola says, I think we should keep Partey. We have more competition next season. Boy says, whoops, time traveled for a second. There, thought we was in Highbury. Terrence Tipp says, Rob, who is the best midfielder signing in the last 10 years. You guys are talking to each other. But yeah, like, he's definitely somebody that in an ideal world I'd prefer to keep, because I do think he's very, very good. And like you guys say, on his day, he is one of the best. But I can also see the other side of the argument why you'd move him on. My only caveat is making sure that you bring somebody in of a certain level of quality. And I think bringing in Lavia, Caicedo, Tchouaméni, somebody like that, I think is more than good enough with Jorginho and Rice already there. I think this idea that like Partey and xhaka are like infinitely better than Rice, Jorginho, and Lavia is a little overstated. It's, I think you only need 2 top DMs, and if you just think about it from like, you have Rice, who, is like a top player. Then you have Jorginho, who's an experienced veteran that's also a good player. And then you have probably the best DM, let's just say Lavia, under 20, DM. We would be like, in the past, be like desperate for quality of that level. And now all of a sudden it's not good enough. So yeah, I think that's more than good enough. I don't know why it wouldn't be. Let's see. T01 says, can't wait to dunk on United at Papa Stan's backyard in preseason. I don't look forward to games against United because my other half is obviously a United fan. And so those games are pretty, even if it's like a friendly, I already feel like, yeah, that very competitive spirit. Social Join says, it's not overstated, it's factual. Jorginho, Rice, Lavia's no data to reference. They never finished second. But if it can't be factual if you can't see it on the other side. So either way, like saying that it's not, if you're going to say that it's not better, you have no factual evidence to state that either. So you're just guessing, saying that without seeing Rice, Lavia, and Jorginho, you have no data to say it's not better. So if you can't, you know what I mean? So either way, we don't know. We're just guessing. So it's not factual. It's your opinion. And opinions aren't always facts. I do feel like it's overstated a bit, because people are, so afraid to lose Thomas Partey. But, there was a time where people thought that the ceiling would fall down if we didn't have a Aubameyang. We've had players before that we didn't think we could move on from, and we moved on pretty easily from them. So I kind of understand what you're saying, but it's not factual if you actually don't have data on either side, whether it's better or not. Um, so yeah. Let's see. Terrence Tibbs says Chouameni is the one. That'd be great if we could get him, but feels a little bit um unrealistic. Diallo says if Partey leaves this summer, it won't be for football reasons. Simple. I couldn't say it any better than that. I don't understand why people are acting like they don't understand what's going on. It's very weird. But yeah. Umar says, "Where's all this Lavia praise coming from? Didn't he just relegate Southampton?" If that's how you think about football, then that's how you think about football. That he relegated Southampton. Okay. Let's be for real. M says it will take about 10 games for Arsenal fans to realize Rice's bang average. Um, I don't know. I don't know if Pep will be willing to spend 90 million on a player that's bang average, but fair enough. People are so, I think, rattled by the fact that Arsenal have gotten Rice that they're trying to delude themselves into thinking that the player is not any good. Joke's on you. Ten Hag wanted Rice. Chelsea wanted Rice, but Rice didn't want them. Pep wanted Rice. Tuchel wanted Rice. Arteta wanted Rice. Like, it's not adding up. The math ain't mathin'. The facts ain't factin', you know? Boy says, best midfield signing 10 years ago was probably Carzola. I think you guys are talking to each other. Michael says people also forget that Man City only have 2 DMs. One of them is Phillips. Most teams only have 2 DMs that actually play. I've been saying that for weeks, Michael. I think that some people are almost overdoing this whole like we need depth. We don't have any depth. Like most top teams, like Man City is also like a very specific like they're state owned. It's a different like most teams don't have the resources to have Calvin Phillips behind Rodri. You know what I mean? So most top teams that you look at, they have probably like a world class DM and then somebody else that's either a little bit older, um, or somebody that's younger but highly talented. Arsenal fans are really afraid of like this idea that like the house of cards is going to fall if Thomas Partey is not there, but just using like I think almost like just taking the emotional aspects out of it. Rice and then Jorginho behind him is better than like 90% of world football, 90%. And if you add like Lavia in there, then you're in a really good position as well. It may not be as good as people thought, like with Rice and Partey and Jorginho, but again, Partey has a very big skeleton coming out of his closet that cannot be ignored when we have these conversations around why he'd leave. So it's one of those. Deb says Jorginho is a good backup to have. He's always fit as well. Getting Lavia would be nice since he's young. We could develop him for next season. And I think that's kind of the idea as well, is that, we know Jorginho is going to leave next season. He's not going to stay another season. So having Lavia already kind of there cooking kind of like underneath, then you have, somebody like a Declan Rice who in a year, probably, have really adapted to the system and playing the way Arsenal plays. Then you have Lavia who's like 18, 19. I think that's better than like 90% of world football. It's not that bad. So yeah, Sola says, I'm happy Xhaka is leaving. He only had one good season. I'm happy to move on from him as well. I don't think, I don't really think that it's that bad for him to go. I think it's good. We need to move on from him, for sure. But yeah, I think again, like for an Arsenal fan, like this has been a really good couple of days. Hopefully the next couple of days are just as good. We're gonna get announcements, obviously, for Timber and Rice. We had the announcement for Russo. If you guys didn't see, Alessia Russo has signed for Arsenal from Manchester United. And so the women are also doing a really good job. Edu is also the sporting director for the women as well. Like he oversees everything. He's doing a really good job, I think. And so now I guess we're just going to start looking at outgoing. Xhaka should be going. Balogun is going to go. Rob Holding is probably going to go as well. And then we're kind of waiting to see what the fate of Thomas Partey is. But this is just going to be a short one today. I love you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a good rest of the day. If anything else happens, you guys know I'll be here. But make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel and get in the comment section afterwards and let me know what you guys think. And I will definitely see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.